Right. Afia, we might have a little longer session this time, but I have some content put together, but if we are unable to cover it, we'll do it in the next one or in the last revision class as well. Okay. I do have content, but let's see if we can cover it or not today. Actually, the one of the last sessions is for revision. So if we are unable to cover it in any of these sessions, we'll cover it at that point of time. Thanks for the reminder. Yeah, I have some slides for that. Okay, we'll wait for a couple of more minutes. Hopefully more people join. I'm not sure. I just started the recording for this. So how has it been going so far? All okay? We are in, I think it's only Afia for today. I'm not sure if more people are joining in. So Afia, are you from biology background, ecology background? Or from a completely different I am not sure which slide this is, and oh, you're from life science. Okay, great. So this is not entirely new. I don't know which is video 15 exactly. Could you tell me what is the content? Or the topic in that part? Is it the same as the indexes? Okay, what is the topic? Population studies and applications. Okay. Okay, I have actually no idea what is on that particular slide. I'll have to go back to the video and check. If there is any particular topic in that in particular, then you can tell me. Slide 138, I'm not really sure. I have to check. Last part of the locus problem case study. Oh, okay. Cool. Let me just make a note of this, and we can try to cover that part. And then I'll put in your Jeopard's index part as well. Okay. Cool. We can cover these two at some point of time. I've noted it down. Hi Rajeshri. Alright, I don't think I don't think a lot of people are joining in. Are you able to attend the other classes, the other TA classes? Yes? Okay, great. So it's good if you're able to attend at least some of them. I know we have 2-hour sessions, so it can get a bit long. Yeah. Alright, so I think maybe let's just start with the first. Nupur, you're saying something? Yes, not. Alright, let's start. So I have a very simple slide that shows 6 biogeographic realms in the world. Would you like to take a name of what these realms are? We can start with the green one. Any idea what this is called? This biogeographic realm in green. Or any of the zones that you know, please feel free to unmute or talk about what it is. No idea. These are biogeographic realms. I'm sure a lot of you have heard about it or studied about it at some point of time. Yes, sure. Just name any ones that you know. Neotropic. Okay. Okay, it's a little bit, I think. Okay. Antarctic. Okay. What else? What? Give me some Indo-Malayan. Okay. Afrotropic. Okay. So which is Afrotropic? Okay, tell me the colors also. As you're giving me the names, tell me the colors also. So Indo-Malayan is what color? Okay, blue is Afrotropic. Okay, Afrotropical. That's right. Brown is Indo-Malayan. Orange is Indo-Malayan. Okay. Okay, sure. One of the same one. Yeah, no problem. Yeah, this one, if you can see my cursor, this is the Indo-Malayan. What about this one in orange, down? Any idea of what the brown could be? Australasian, that's correct. Yes. Then what about the purple color, which is South American? This one, which is covering South America? Neotropical, okay. And what about the green one? Okay, not Arctic, but it is Nearctic. Yeah. And what about the red or the top rust colored one? Palearctic. All right. So that's good. I think all of you know all of the zones, so that's great. So you have the Nearctic, Palearctic, Neotropic, Afrotropic, Indo-Malayan and the Australasian. So now tell me, based on what classification were these biogeographic realms made, and is this still the current status of biogeographical realms in the world? Okay, let's discuss on the basis of what were these biogeographic realms made. Correct option is Wallace for. I didn't quite get that, Rajeshri. Do you want to maybe expand? Any idea why we have these biogeographical realms? What's the big point? Study of patterns distribution of animals and plants. Yes, that is correct, and that's why we have biogeographic realms, right? Because these different areas have different characteristics that are connected by flora, fauna, and abiotic conditions, and that's why they can be categorized into these broad zones. So, this is the basis of the classification of the biogeographic realms. Subdivision of animals on living zones. Yes, that's correct. And also, the thing is this map that you see on the screen right now, is this the most accurate version of the biogeographic realm, or is there another correct option? So I think Rajshri was saying that the correct option is Wallace's system. How many biogeographic realms can you see out here? Well, actually, there are two that are missing. One is Oceania, which comes like somewhere near, let's say, Australia, above Australia. And then there's another one that is called the Antarctic, which is right at the bottom. Right? So, to answer your question, there is actually an updated version, and that updated version came in the year of 2013. This was published in the paper in the scientific journal known as Science, and let me just pull that up. This is what the number of biogeographical realms in the world. So, if you look at this, do you think the number of realms have increased or decreased? This is the updated version. Is everyone sure that they have increased? Right. So, can someone tell me, can any of you like name these increased sites? Which are the new regions that you see? Saharo-Arabian. Yeah. So, what was the Saharo-Arabian before? It was clubbed with the Palearctic, right? So if you see you have Madagascan, you have Sino-Japanese, you have Saharo-Arabian. What else? I can see one more. Panamanian, right? So if you see the part that was in red before, that has been actually split into several different regions. Let me see if I can bring that back again so that it's quite evident to you. So if you see the regions in red out here, these regions, this region has become the Saharo-Arabian region. This region has been split into Oriental and Sino-Japanese on the top, and If you see, the Palearctic region has been restricted to the top again, and your South American region from your neotropical has been split into Panamanian, which is separate. You have Africa that is split into Saharo-Arabian, Afrotropical, and then you have Madagascan, and then you also have the Oceania here. So this is the updated version. I can send you a link of the updated version out here. So this is the science paper article that classified these biogeographic realms into further fine scale classification based on documentation of distributional data of several other terrestrial vertebrates and of course the marine vertebrates as well. Alright, so I hope this is clear to everyone that the biogeographical zones have increased. Okay, so now let's zoom into our country a little bit, and I have listed out on the left side several types of habitats, and these are the states that you find them in. I would like you to match the following and tell me which is the correct answers. So you can just use the chat box and tell me. Okay, so a couple of you are okay. Keep it going. Shantanu, what about you? What do you feel are the right combinations? So I have responses from Afia, Nupur, Rajshri, and who else is left? There's one more person, Aparna. Yes, Shantanu and Aparna, what do you feel are the correct matches? Okay, so okay, right. So I think most of you have got all the answers correct. So you find the Shola forests in Tamil Nadu, of course, yes. Can you tell me another state where there are Shola forests? Couple of other states where Shola forests are found apart from Tamil Nadu? Karnataka, okay, and Karnataka, Goa, and Maharashtra. Okay, probably not in Maharashtra. Kerala, yes, of course. Kerala is another state where you have a large proportion of shola forests, and yes, you do find them in Karnataka as well. Alright, so when I talk about riverine floodplains, everyone has mentioned Uttarakhand. What am I talking about? Basically, which river and its tributaries in riverine floodplains? Okay, the Ganges and its tributaries. And could you tell me a few more states where you would find these floodplains? Bengal, yes. Bihar, and UP, right? So broadly in these, of course, in a few maybe like some extensions in some other states, but broadly in these four states you find these riverine floodplains. And when we talk about the run of Kutch, it is in Gujarat. Can someone tell me some interesting terrestrial vertebrates that are found in the run of Kutch that are not found anywhere else? Right, you find the wild ass there that are endemic to the run of Kutch. They are known as the Indian wild ass. Yes, you do find flamingos are there. I'm so happy. Like all of you have a good idea of the geography of the country as well as the fauna present out there. So yes, yes, you do find your flamingos also there, but these flamingos are also found in migrating to other states. So you have the lesser flamingo in particular that you find in the run of Kutch, the greater run of Kutch, little run of Kutch, and they even come down to Maharashtra, found near the coastline of Mumbai. And the wild ass are only found out there in this run of Kutch. So now alpine meadows by are characteristic of Uttarakhand. Can someone give me an example of a region in Uttarakhand which consists of alpine meadows? Do you know what is an alpine meadow? No? Okay. Eastern Himalayan region. Okay. So, well, you're close, but alpine, yes, definitely does mean high elevation and mountainous. But alpine meadows in India are found in the western Himalayan region, right? So, they are actually high elevation grasslands that are found in western Himalaya. And one of the most famous examples of alpine meadows in Uttarakhand is known as the Valley of Flowers. So if you see, just bring up some Google images. So you probably might have seen these images, but this is an image of like an alpine meadow where you have these short grasses and yeah, various different flowers that are flowering around. So these particular shrubby landscapes consist of alpine meadows, and these are found restricted to the western Himalayas of our country. They also extend up to Nepal and Tibet, right? So they have shrubs, and I'm not sure if you have heard about this, but there is this beautiful flowering plant known as the rhododendron, which is characteristic of these alpine regions as well, and of course a huge number of endemic flowering plants also. So, any idea of what could be the large mammals found in this area? Any one name? Snow leopard, okay. What else? So you have a lot of these, like even mountain goats, Himalayan Thar, etc. in this region, right? And the Great Indian Desert is found, yeah, and the Great Indian Desert is restricted to the Rajasthan area, right? And could you give me some animals or some characteristics of this area? The Great Indian Desert in Rajasthan. So the Thar Desert falls in the Great Indian Desert. High temperature, cold nights, sand dunes, shrub forest. Sure, but like very sparse, right? So, yes, definitely you have the high temperatures and cold nights for sure. So, there's a huge fluctuation in temperature, right? And you have animals that are adapted to survive in such climates, right? So they have basically, what do you think would be the adaptations of animals in this area, or even plants in this area? Any guesses? Think of it, you're studying biogeography and wildlife ecology. When you have a biogeographic realm a characterized by a desert region, what could be the possible adaptations of animals to this region? So, affairs says to reserve water to protect from sand, plants require less water. Sure. So, what modification do plants usually have in this region? Animals, yes, the hump of camels that acts as a storage region. How do plants avoid um, losing water? Yeah, excellent. Wax on surface, drought resistant trees, some other modifications, thorns, etc. Right? So they have like so many modifications that help in basically conserving a lot of water, right? Because that's the greatest thing. And also you do find in deserted regions and desert kind of regions, animals undergoing a lot of modifications to conserve water via hibernation. So they hibernate during these colder months and then come out during the other times of the day. And also plants, they undergo a lot of modifications. So a quick question, what do you think would be the ways of pollination of plants in this region, if you had to take a guess? How do you think plants are pollinated in deserted regions? What do you feel is the way of pollination or dispersal? Alright, think about it. We'll come to this part later. Let me go to the next question, which is not appearing for some reason. Okay, so tell me, what are relict species? Relict species are previously widespread species that are found in fossils. They are previously widespread species but currently range restricted. They are previously widespread species that are currently extinct, or they are previously widespread and currently also widespread species. What do you think the name relict species suggests? Okay. Two people say B. Others? Okay. So could you give me an example or a hypothetical situation where a relict species could be formed? Explain a situation where such a thing could happen. Ginkgo biloba. I think you've got the name a little bit incorrect. Yeah, Afia. Would you like to explain? I'm not actually sure about this, but happy to hear. What is actually happening for Ginkgo biloba? Could you explain a little more? Okay. And what was the reason for it to shrink in its range? Not sure. Okay. Competition, continental drift, climate change. So, Rajeshri, are you talking about Ginkgo biloba or some other species? Rajeshri? So basically, relic species. Okay. So basically, I was just reading about ginkgo biloba, and it survived over several years, and this lineage survived not only the KT mass extinction but also the Pleistocene glaciations to become a. Okay, the concept is new, but everybody managed to get the right answer. So yes, so relic species are found, were previously widespread and are now found only in certain regions, and this can be due to a large number of reasons, one of which usually is seen to be like some concept of climate change, and climate change that forces species to occupy certain regions. So when the suitable habitat shrinks, they get contracted into zones that have more favorable habitats, and now they are known to be relic species because they were previously widespread and are now only found in a very small area. And some of the best examples that you can see are species that are found on top of mountain tops, because they were originally a widespread species, but right now, because of climatic factors, they have now been just restricted to a small particular area. So you have a bunch of plants and animals that do fall under this category, right? I think there are a couple of examples of butterflies. I'm not sure which is the exact species, but yeah, and even most of these marsupial animals that were found are found in mainland Australia. So that is what relic species are. Okay, so tell me, which of the following is not a biogeographic gap in India? Is it the Palghat Gap? Is it the Goa Gap? Is it the Shenkota Gap? Or is it the Satpura Gap? Any idea? Anybody? No? Okay, that's okay. Anybody else? So, does everybody know what is a biogeographic gap or a biogeographic barrier? Biogeographic gap or biogeographic barrier? Any guesses? Nobody knows what is a biogeographic gap or a biogeographic barrier. What does it sound like it is? At least. Barrier between two biogeographic zones. Okay. Even it is even within like a biogeographic zone. Like for example, if you're thinking of the biogeographic realms, even within biogeographic realms we have biogeographic barriers. But what do you think could be barriers, biogeographic barriers? So when you say barrier, so if I say this is a barrier between X species in this area and between area A and B, what could possibly be this biogeographic barrier, sorry. For a particular species. So if I take any species into consideration, what do you think is a biogeographic barrier? Okay, a biogeographic barrier is a push factor which does not allow a particular animal to be there. Could you give me some examples of what could be a possible biogeographic barrier? What are the examples of these push factors? Okay, Sky Island, but what is I'm looking for a particular feature. What is this particular feature in a particular example that can serve as a biogeographic barrier? Inaccessible terrain, okay. Islands, okay. So islands, in an island system, for example, what acts as a barrier? Let's take the example of a terrestrial animal. For a terrestrial animal, what will act as a biogeographic barrier in an island type of system? So there is some region in this which is inaccessible, right? Correct. Ocean, right? Water body, correct. So all these are biogeographical barriers, right? So they are barriers that prevent these animals from crossing from one island to another island. Of course, if they fly and the areas are quite close to each other, it is possible that they move. But if the islands are at a distance from each other, separated by this ocean, they form biogeographic barriers, right? So just like oceans, what are other biogeographic barriers? Now can you think of some examples? Mountains, okay. So if a mountain is suddenly coming in between another flat area, sure. What about the opposite? In a sky island system, islands in mountain tops of these sky islands, what here is a biogeographic barrier? Valleys, correct? Right. So when you talk about biogeographic barriers in southern India, you have several of them, especially across the Western Ghats. And in these biogeographic barriers, you find the Palghat Gap, the Goa Gap and the Shenkota Gap. The Satpura Gap does not exist at all. So the Palghat Gap lies across Kerala and Tamil Nadu, where you find this huge road going in between, separating like two island body systems, and this is known as a Palghat Gap. The Goa Gap is on the top near Goa, which is actually a climatic barrier. So, a differential climatic barrier results in species being unable to cross across this. And you have the Shenkuta Gap, which is below the Palghat Gap, that also forms a hard valley geographic barrier and prevents species from moving north and south of this, right? So you don't need to worry about the Satpura Gap because it actually does not exist. Okay, so now let's move on to, I hope this was clear to everyone and hope the concept of biogeographic barriers itself is clear. Right? So let's move on to the next question, which is basically the theory of island biogeography. So according to the theory of biogeography, which island size will support the most number of species? Take some time to stare at this graph and then tell me. I would like us to discuss this graph as well. Which island will support the most number of species? Okay, so let's try and look at this graph first and try to understand what this graph is telling us. Can someone explain this graph to me? What are the two main factors that we are looking at in this graph? So on the x-axis, we have number of species, right? We have number of species from low to high. Basically, as you move from left to right, the number of species increases. Then you have rate on the y-axis, which is basically rate of extinction, which you see out here in the dotted line, rate of extinction, and you have rate of colonization, right? So let's just look at this. So as you move so you have, and then you have two, so you have rate of extinction and colonization, you have the number of species, and then you have large islands, small islands, which is size, and then you have close islands and remote islands, right? So near and far islands, which is distance. So you have these four parameters that are accounted for in the theory of island biogeography, right? So now the rate of colonization is basically higher. The rate of colonization will be higher on larger islands that are closer and smaller islands also that are closer, but more in larger islands that are closer rather than smaller islands that are closer, right? Because why is that so? Because they have larger areas to accommodate more individuals, right? And also because they have a larger area, the rate of extinction on larger islands is higher or lesser? Tell me. Rate of extinction on larger islands is high or low? Right. So rate of extinction on larger islands is lower, right? Now if we see the number of species that are the number of species that colonize which island type, you find large close islands having these many number of species. Can you see where my cursor is right now? On this particular point, let me just bring the pointer on top. So if you see my pointer out here with this intersection of close and large, so close large islands have the highest number of species, right? And then you have large remote islands that have this number of species, which is almost the same as close small islands, right? Can you see this intersection? This intersection and this intersection has the same number of individuals, right? So you have large remote islands, which are large islands that are far away, that have the same number of species as the close islands that are small. Can someone tell me why? Immigration. Okay. Immigration is higher for which one? Close small or large far? Close small, correct, right? And rate of, that is colonization, immigration, which is correct, Rajeshri. And what about rate of extinction? Rate of extinction will be higher in which island? Rate of extinction will be higher on smaller islands, right? So even though you have a large number of species that can probably reach that landmass, your rate of extinction is going to be higher because the island area itself is small, right? But if you go for a large island that is far away from the mainland, it will have a lower colonization rate because they will be, even though it can support a large number of individuals, only a few individuals are able to make it till that place. That's why they have comparable mid-level number of species, right? But if we look at large, far away, remote, small islands, they have the least number of species. Because first of all, they are far away, so lesser number of number of species to migrate till there. And they are also very small islands, right? So making them very difficult for that particular landmass to support individuals. So, according to the theory of biogeography, which island size supports the most number of species? It will have to be close large islands, which falls here, right? This particular solid line intersection, if you drop it down to this as a perpendicular, that will have the most number of species. Is this clear to everyone? Yes, no, yes, okay. So the theory of island biogeography is quite important. I hope you everybody has understood that. So here is another illustration. So you have the distance effect, which is basically just what we discussed. More species to colonize island, more close to the mainland, right? So if you see the same island size, you have larger number of individuals colonizing closer islands and further islands. If you look at island size, a large number of islands species colonize larger islands because they have larger area than smaller islands, right? And you have proportionately fewer species going extinct on larger islands than on smaller islands, right? Right. Okay, I hope this is clearer. So, another question on island biogeography. The equilibrium theory of island biogeography predicts that the number of species found on an island increases steadily till it equals the number in the mainland species pool, is greater on larger islands than on smaller islands, is smaller on islands near the mainland than on distant ones, can never reach an equilibrium, or is greater for islands near the equator than the poles. Now we just covered this, so you guys should be able to pick the correct answer, which is what is the correct answer for this? I'm not sure if anyone is using the chat box because I see no answers. Come on, we just covered this. The number of species found on an island is what is the right answer? Which of the options, Rajeshri? I'm not sure which of the options you have selected. Is it A, B, C, D, E? Obvious is B. Where Rajshri says B. Nupur says B. Right, so it is B, right? It is greater on larger islands than on smaller ones, and that is the most correct answer in this particularly given situation. Oh, I have question of relict species again. Okay, so which of the following is an example of dispersal? Movement of monarch butterflies 3000 miles from northeastern North America to southwestern Mexico. Movement of a group of rosy starling, which are a species of bird in the air Movement of a young juvenile female bird out of its natal territory to set up its own territory, or movement of a squirrel to find food. Okay, I'm gonna wait for a couple of more answers. Okay. Okay, everybody says C on the majority. So, what is actually illustrated in A? What type of movement is illustrated in A? Okay. So, what does migration mean? Yeah, all of you are correct. What does migration mean? Seasonal fixed route movement, right? Two-way movement in search of better conditions. Correct. Excellent. What is this movement of a group of rosy starling in the air known as? Any idea? So rosy starling are a group of starling like miners. Excellent. Murmuration. So what basically is murmurations? Well, they need not do murmurations to migrate. So I'm not sure if you might have seen these movements in the sky just before these birds they roost in a tree. Roosting basically means when individuals come together during dusk and they spend some time in a particular area. It is known as a roost, which is usually a tree that hosts a large number of individuals. Yes, roosting has supposed to be having a number of attributes to it, and one of the reasons is a kind of defense against predator. You're correct, Rajeshri, because it has to do with something of a dilution effect. Some studies also mention that it might be having some thermoregulatory benefit, right? So that is known as a migration. Also, all of you collectively said that movement of young juvenile female bird out of its natal territory is known as dispersal. Could someone elaborate a little bit more? Rosy starling do migrate, but a movement of rosy starling in the air, probably I should have been more specific, just before roosting, right? So you have these huge flocks that go in waves just before they get into a roost, and that is known as murmuration. Right. So, can someone tell me about dispersal in terms of movement from natal territory? So, in birds, especially passeriforms, as an order, which of the two migrate more, are disperse more? Are there? Yeah, you're correct. Rajashri. They move away from their birth location and away from a population to settle and reproduce. So, do males disperse more than females, or females disperse larger distances than males in birds on an average? Do you feel males disperse more or female birds disperse more? Not sure? Okay. So, yes, Nubur, you're correct. They are actually females that disperse more than the males. And this is a common trend that is seen in female birds because they have to leave their native territory to find suitable areas that where they can nest in, right? And movement of a squirrel to find food is nothing but just foraging, right? Alright, so state the dispersal type of each fruit seed shown in the images given below. There are 4 images. Please list out what could be the mechanisms for dispersal. So let's go to the first image. What do you think is the mode of dispersal for the plant in image 1? Okay, Rajashri, by wind. Hafi, I'm not sure what you mean by jump. Okay, so for the first figure, it's actually as Rajshri mentioned, for the first figure it's by wind. It's basically right. So it is a wind dispersed seed. As you can see, the seeds are really fluffy and cottony, and when the seed pod bursts open, the wind actually carries these seeds to a larger dispersing distance. And this is an example of the red silk cotton tree. I'm not sure how many of you would have seen this tree. The second picture that is shown out here is basically a coconut or a palm, and a palm is dispersed mostly by water. As you can see out here, it has floated from the sea and it is started germinating on a beach. And the characteristic of these water dispersed seeds, could you name a characteristic that is present in these water dispersed seeds? What should be a property that enables them to be dispersed by water? What do you think should be the properties of a water dispersed plant? Just think of a coconut out here. This is not your dried coconut, but it's a coconut with the husk. Just look at it and what do you think are the properties? Hard outer shell. Okay, it's hard, but what else should it be to be able to disperse this by water? Floating. Right, correct. They should be able to float, they should be buoyant. I'm not sure about the stigma, but we are talking about germination, not about pollination. Right, so pollination is different and germination is different for dispersal. So, yes, it needs to be floating, it needs to be buoyant and it shouldn't get wet, right? So, it should have some degree of waterproof properties to it, and it should be able to float and not sink large distances, right? And what about the fruit in can someone identify the fruit that is shown in image 3? Blueberry. It's a berry and it's found in India. Any guesses that looks like that? You can see by the leaf. Right, it's a jamun. And jamun is mostly dispersed by a lot of animals, right? They could be birds or mammals. Right. So jamun is dispersed by animals. And what about the last one? The last one is actually a balsam pod, which basically this particular image can't capture the way in which it has burst, but it's actually burst open by some contact. So when an animal brushes against this, due to a bursting factor, this particular seed pod bursts open and is able to disperse its seeds further away from the parent plant. So why is dispersal important? Any idea as to why is dispersal important? To less a competition with the parents. Yes, correct. Absolutely right. Okay, so tell me, which law describes the range of tolerance in organisms? Whose law is this? It's covered in your lectures. Shelford's law, says Afia. Others? Okay, Shelford's law. Yeah. So, what does Shelford's law actually tell us? You can explain based on the image that is provided. Any idea what the Shelford's law states? Species distribution depends on the factor having the narrowest range. Right. So the abundance of individuals in a particular region is dependent upon several factors, and there is an optimal range which is mostly environmental factors that governs where the largest number of individuals of this particular species are found, right? So you have environmental factors on the x-axis and you have population size on the y-axis, and you have these environmental factors that comprise an optimal range. So the individuals are found beyond that, but only till a certain extent where your environmental factor matrix falls, right? Beyond that you don't have any individuals of the particular species, and the range in which you have the most number of species is basically the range where the environmental factors are optimal, right? So that is what Shelford's law says. It's a distribution of species will be controlled by environmental factors for which the organism has the narrowest range of tolerance. Alright, so in an image given alongside, you can see a species. Does anybody know what the species is? Species of bird? Amur falcon, correct. Right. So can someone comment on the behavior of the species? What is basically shown? Migration. Okay, so what's really happening in this migration? Why? What is it migrating for? The map shows it. Right, it's going from China to Africa, right? So it's wintering basically to avoid the harsh winter, right? And where is it breeding? Where do Amur falcons breed? Are they breeding in Africa? What does the map say? The map suggests that Amur falcons are breeding in Mongolia, in the Mongolian Chinese area, and they are wintering in South Africa, right? So what do you mean by wintering? So wintering, as someone mentioned earlier, they spend the winter time of the breeding site in another area. Okay, so basically migration happens at some point of time in the year, and this is during the non-breeding season. The non-breeding season comprises of the when it goes during the winter, right? So they breed in China during the summers where the weather is nice and there is a huge abundance of prey to feed their chick, and then during the winters they migrate way down southwest in the direction of South Africa, where they spend the wintering areas in this region, and they move back there just before the onset of as summer approaches to go back to breeding there, right? So this shows the migratory pathway of an Amur falcon, right? I hope that is understandable to all of you. Alright, so allelopathy is an important component in the development of future integrated strategies for what? Soil management, weed management, disease management, water management. Okay, B. Bunch of you have selected B. That is a correct answer. So, what is basically allelopathy? Can someone explain what is allelopathy? Okay, a push factor. What does it entail? What does the mechanism of allelopathy entail? Right. So, does it positively affect the growth of others, or does it negatively affect the growth of others? Negatively, right? Okay. All right. So, given alongside is a figure that shows current assemblages on your in animal. What do you mean by that, Afia? Sorry, I missed that. How does allelopathy work in animal, or are you talking about the weed management? Any example? Oh, I am not really sure of any particular example. All I can think of is pest management that is used, but it's usually used by some organism consuming another organism, but not in the form of any biochemical reactions. So, usually predation is what is employed for pest control for animals, but I'm not sure about allelopathy. So, if you do come across some examples, please do share it. Yeah. Alright, so let's look at this particular figure that shows us assemblages, and we are looking at community assemblages of certain birds across a elevational gradient from low to high, right? You have low elevations till 500 meters, mid elevations from 1000 to 250 meters, high elevation from 3000 to 350 and above that, right? And then you have current assemblages on this half, which is the left, and projected future assemblages, which is on the right. So now can you tell me where is the highest change in species composition in the future? In which particular zone? Where is the highest change? change as in most change. Where is the most change happening, in which zone? So Rajshri says mid and high. Mid elevation. Afia says mid. Rajshri says highest zone. Highest zone. Okay. So think about this. Where is the most change happening? In the highest zone. Is that what everybody agrees on? Mid, okay. Extinction is prevalent in the highest zone. Okay. Okay. So, if you look at this figure, the most amount of change is actually happening in the lowest zone. Can you see? So, before we had 4 species, and that has become now just 1 species. There's only 1 species left in the lowest zone, right? And in the mid zone we had 4 species, and now we have 6 species, right? 6 species are present. 1, 2, 3, 4. Actually 5 species are present, because these 1, 2, 3, 4. 4 species are present, because there are 2 that are the same species that are moved up, and in the highest elevation you see 1 species has gone extinct and this 1 species has moved up, right? It was already here in the first place, but yeah, it has gone extinct from the lowest layer. Oh, I don't think you can see my cursor. Yeah, so from the lowest level you have 4 species. Out of 4 species only 1 is remaining, and then out here you have, out of the 4 species you have 5 species. This species has moved up, though it is still present here. And at the highest level you have 1 species, the species that is extinct, and the species that is still existing, right? So the highest change in species composition in the future is seen in the lowest elevation, where most number of species have become extinct, right? And where is extinction going to be most prevalent? In which section? Sorry, I missed the chat. I was on another tab. So tell me, where in which area is extinction going to be the most prevalent? Lowest elevation. Extinction means complete eradication of a species. So highest extinction rate, or let's not even talk about a highest. Let's just talk about extinction. Extinction is of course seen at the highest elevation, right? Because when a species is pushed out of the lower strata, it just moves higher and higher up till the climate in the highest region becomes unfavorable, and then they become extinct, right? So these dotted lines basically show us extinction, and the solid lines without the fill in it shows that they have moved from this particular area, right? So I hope this graph is clear to all of you out here. Yeah, does this make sense? When we talk about colonization, species composition and extinction. So this is just an explanation from an example that is illustrated in this particular study that looks at the projected impacts of climate change on diversity of birds along an elevational gradient. I can link the paper out here in case you are interested as well. You can have a look at this. All right. So here you have the distribution of a particular species. Can someone tell me which species this is, if you know? Do you know what species is shown out here? Bustard. Okay, not it's not a bustard. I should have probably put a clearer map, but not the florican either. So if I have to tell you this particular orange, let me go to the map. This orange circle falls in a small district in Karnataka. So if you can see Bangalore out here, you see Tirupati, Nellore, Andhra Pradesh. What are the other? Raichur, Hubli, Hassan, Tumkur. Yeah, so it's here in Andhra Pradesh. So what bird do you think this is? Is anybody from Andhra Pradesh on this with us today? I'm guessing not. Right. So this bird is actually, if you don't know this bird is actually known as the Jordan's cozer, right? Let me just type its name out here. Has anybody heard of this bird or not? Yes, no? Some responses? No? Okay. Anybody else has heard of this bird? Alright. So this Jordan's cozer bird is basically found in a very small distribution in India and in this very small area of Kadapa in Andhra Pradesh, right? So this is the entire distribution of this particular species in the entire world, and the species was last seen several years ago, right? It was last seen in 2009, and there have been several scientists that have been working on this. So there was a scientist who was associated with the Bombay Natural History Society known as Dr. Bharat. So he did intensive studies on this particular Jordan's cozer, and he rediscovered this bird after almost 80 to 100 years. So it was discovered in the early 900s, and then after that nobody had seen this bird, and then this bird was rediscovered in the late 1900s in Kadapa in Andhra Pradesh, right? So Bharat Bhushan did a number of studies to monitor the species, and following Dr. Bharat Bhushan, there was Dr. P. Jagannathan, who also worked extensively on the Jordan's cozer and used different methods to find this bird. So they used various different ways to find this bird. They put like sand strips on the so this is a scrubland type bird which is found in the scrubby short habitat types. It is very hot in this region. The summer temperatures can reach up to almost 50 degrees Celsius, and what is even more difficult to study this bird is that it is a nocturnal bird. So first of all, it's a cryptic bird that is hardly ever seen, which is very very rare, and on top of that it's a nocturnal bird. So that makes it even more difficult to study. And Based on several different factors that have been used to monitor this bird, they use tracking strips that I explained. What do you think could be the other ways of yes, Jyotipriya, they are endemic to India. They are found only in India, in this really tiny area which is about 400 square kilometers. It's known as the Sri Lankamaleshwara Wildlife Sanctuary, which was declared a wildlife sanctuary for the protection of the species. And the closest ancestors to this particular bird are not found in India. If you look at the phylogenetic trees, I don't think we've covered phylogenetic trees yet, but the closest ancestors to this bird or the closest related species are found all the way in Africa. So this is the only bird of its genus. The scientific name of this bird is Rhinoptilus bitorcatus. So this is the only bird of its genus that is found in Asia. The other Rhinoptilus species, there are 2 or 3 of them, they are found in Africa. So what do you think could be ways in which this particular species can be monitored? Given the information that I have given to you, what are the ways? So all of you learnt of different ways in which you can monitor wildlife, right? All techniques, etc. And you covered these techniques in the earlier classes. So given the description that I just now gave you, this is a nocturnal bird. It is cryptic and it is very rare. What could be the possible monitoring techniques to find this bird? Sound, okay. And what else? Echo. I'm not sure. Eco, what do you mean by eco, Akash? Would you like to elaborate more on this? Are you talking about ecology or something similar? I'm not sure. Camera traps, okay, that's another good idea. So you can use camera traps and you can put these in areas that where you think that the bird is moving. So what they did was they first laid out these sand strips and they looked at footprints of this bird, right? So the footprints of these birds are very unique, and how they got to know about the footprint of the bird is via museum samples. So we have the Jordan's Coaster as a museum sample in 2 museums in the world, or 2 or 3 museums in the world, and they went to these museums to look at these specimens and actually measured the feet and the distances, and then they put these sand tracking strips in particular areas and they rolled out the sand so that it was smooth, and then after a bird would walk in the area, they would come and measure these footprint sizes, right? So even though this has a pretty distinct footprint, it was quite confused with other co-occurring species in the area. And they also, near these tracking strips, they put camera traps. So these camera traps are basically just sensors that are triggered by anything that passes through it. And these camera traps were positioned in such a way, and these camera traps were able to capture one of the several records of this bird between 2000 to 2009, right? So camera traps can give you visual confirmation of the presence of a species, and due to the whatever reasons I described to you right now, this bird has been classified as critically endangered. Does anybody know what does critically endangered mean? You can see the bar below in this figure given alongside. Out here it's written critically endangered. What is this classification? Does anyone have any idea? Does anyone have an idea of what is critically endangered? So there are various degrees of classification, as you can see. You have not evaluated, data deficient, least concern, near threatened, vulnerable, endangered, critically endangered, extinct in the wild, extinct. Has anyone heard of these types of classification? Yes, as Nupur says, they are IUCN classification. Do you know what is the IUCN? Does anyone know what the IUCN stands for? IUCN, what is the full form of IUCN? Right, that was easy, right? International Union for Conservation of Nature, right? And in the IUCN, you have a particular thing known as the red list, right? You have the red list of threatened species that basically classifies individuals based on whatever surveys have done. Let me pull up there. IUCN red list. Oops. Oh, I don't know why this is not working. So this is the IUCN red list page where you can see where there are all the possible species are listed out here. And if I look for Jordan's cozer, you find everything about the Jordan's cozer here, right? So it was basically last assessed in October 2016 in detail, right? And this is the area where it is found. So if you see, if I zoom out and just leave India, you can clearly see this tiny area that it is found in, right? And I have various different ways of seeing information out here. So it falls under the critically endangered category because of its single small declining population, which is threatened by the exploitation of scrub forest, livestock grazing, disturbance and quarrying. There have been no confirmed sightings since 2009. So can you imagine, since 2009 this bird has not been seen, right? And you have various ways in which you can look at different metrics of this particular species, population trends, where are they found, what are the threats, etc., etc., and then you will have the citations to whatever studies have been done. So Dr. P. Jagannathan is one of the people who was last involved in studying the Jordan's cozer in detail, right? So moving on to how it is declared as critically endangered, you can look up at any species and their IUCN. Yes, they are facing an extremely high risk of extinction, and the only way to evaluate this is by doing sustained studies in this particular area, right? So if people are not surveying this area due to whatever different means, it is going to be very difficult to find the species. And we as a lab from ICL Tirupati also worked on the species between 2019 to 2021, and we used, I think somebody mentioned sound, we used acoustic monitoring. So birds, any and every bird, most often it is going to vocalize in some form or the other, and we had recordings of this bird which were taken by Dr. P. Jagannathan in 2001. So based on this, we created a detection framework and deployed these recorders. So basically what these recorders are, they are devices that can be programmed and put on a tree and left uninterrupted for several days altogether. So we had multiple recording cycles where these recorders recorded for the entire nocturnal cycle in the night for 5 months, and we analyzed the data and created some detection algorithms to obtain a classifier that can detect the species in these recordings that we collected. So we collected about 8 terabytes of data, and we use these algorithms to screen that. And we have a publication on this. We were unable to find the bird, but we found one particular bird that mimicked the call of the Jordan's courser. So that call was not an actual mimicry, but was very similar to the species that we were trying to find. And I can share with you a common article. So you can feel free to read this article, which is based on our paper on how we detected this particular species. In acoustic monitoring, how to find mimicry sounds? Yeah, that is an excellent question, Rajeshri. So when you find, I'm happy you brought up that question. So this was a particular recorder that malfunctioned, and instead of recording nocturnal data, it recorded daytime data. So this bird is not at all active during the day, it's only active in the night. And this particular bird, this particular vocalization was caught around some 10 a.m. in the morning, right? So now when you find a call that matches very similarly the call of your target species, you have to look at the context of the call, and the context of the call is nothing but looking at recordings before and after the target call. So if a bird is calling, it will call multiple times, right? So in the recording before and after the target call, you should find the calls of this bird. So when one of my collaborators looked at the calls of this particular call in question, they found no other occurrences of this particular call type. It seemed really weird. And then this collaborator found other calls in between calls of another bird. So he is very good at with bird calls, and he found that this was actually a bayback shrike, which is a bird that is found to be a known mimic, which is found in this area and is a co-occurring species. So he found this particular bay-backed shrike mimicking a bulbul, mimicking a thickney, mimicking this potential Jordan's courser call. So the occurrence of this call was only once, but it was interspersed with other birds' calls as well in fast succession. So you can make out mimicry based on various other factors, and something that you can also look at is papers by Dr. Sameera Agnihotri, who looked at for her PhD mimicry in the greater racket-tailed drongo in South India. So these drongos are also huge vocal mimics, and she has a lot of papers in relation to that. So if you're interested in this, please do go check it out. So that is how we can also use acoustic monitoring to monitor large areas without much human intervention, because you can't have humans walking around in the night in a wildlife sanctuary, right? Because it's a protected area. So even if you're scientists and researchers, you won't be allowed inside the area. So in an alternative monitoring strategy, we use acoustic technology instead of visual camera traps to do this. If it mimics Jordan's courser, then it hear that, thus the latter one may be present. Yes, it is a possibility, but we cannot confirm it just based on one call. It could also be possible that it heard it from this particular call type is being passed by vocal mimics generation after generation within the species. So maybe some bayback shrike that lived 10 years ago learned that call and passed it on to its next generation, next generation, and next generation, and that call type still persists. Or this bird has heard the call in the night and incorporated it into its repertoire, or it has modified the call of some other bird's call and it sounds similar to the Jordan Scozer. So, great points brought up by both of you, Rajshri and Afia. So, I hope you guys get an idea of how we actually go about developing like detection technologies and detection methods for such critically endangered species, and try and contribute towards conservation. So this is one particular way, and yeah, I think this is we can close the session here because we are almost done. But yeah, I hope you enjoyed this, and Afia has a couple of doubts that we can cover in the next sessions as well. And yeah, all right. Thanks for joining in today. I know there were very few people, but yeah, catch you all next time. All right, bye. We shall meet for week 8.